So, good morning, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and all my other viewers. Happy New Year. Uh, so, this week's been interesting. We have a new president, and already we're dealing with Alright, one of the things that I always warn people is Trump could be a puppet. I kind of was hoping it was the other way around, and I kind of still get the idea that possibly he's not a puppet. Possibly he's doing exactly what he's meant to do, which is basically destroy both sides. It's kind of like Anakin Skywalker and how he was supposed to bring balance to the Force by actually just destroying both sides. That's what I'm kind of hoping it still is. What we're dealing with now is, for every plus there's a minus, and the minuses are starting to stack up. Now by this I mean, unfortunately, because he had to align himself with the most right-leaning parts of the Republican Party, he's dealing with a really shallow end of the experience pool. It wasn't just tied to his campaign, it's to some of the people that he's nominating for cabinet positions. Betsy DeVos. She's totally fucking clueless. She knows nothing about education. She's a moron. And she's pretty much going to get a pass. Rex Tillerson, Marco Rubio, for all his bravado about being, standing up against Trump, stuck his head up his ass and let that pass. There are some, good ones. Military, we needed somebody strong in there, definitely. Somebody who the Democrats keep trying to make out as this homophobic, anti-woman, the typical liberal bullshit that we always hear. But I think the real flag right now are some of his executive orders. Some of them are excellent. Some of them, he is delivering on exactly what he promised. The stop to immigration from the top, 6 or 7 flagged countries for terrorism? Absolutely. And why it was something that Obama wouldn't do totally baffles me. Putting a halt to immigration. It shouldn't just be Syrian, because a lot of what Europe is dealing with now is specifically North African. So, bravo for stopping Syrian refugees, but the refugee trickle needs to be like a super trickle. It could even stop, honest to God. Are there people with legitimate asylum needs? Yeah, of course. But at this point, given the scope of terrorism around the world, I'd put a complete stop to it. That's just me. A lot of people think it should be completely stopped. Maybe, who knows? He might be heading in that direction. So that was the first one that was, bravo, excellent move. The freeze on government hiring. He's living up to what he said. Fiscal responsibility in government. It's something that Republicans have wanted for a long time. They didn't get it under Bush. If anything, Bush expanded government, much to the derision of a lot of people. He's doing some of the things that he promised. And you can't chide him on that. He's doing some of the things that he promised. One of the big flags for me, and some of us saw it coming based on who he's surrounded by, who's invested in the companies. Both of the pipelines that he executive order re-greenlit were bad ideas. I know the Republicans are selling it as this is going to keep energy costs low for Americans. The simple fact is, this is crude oil in its crudest form. It's being transported from the north to the south for refinement. 80% of it is not even going to be used by Americans. It's going to be shipped overseas, and the company that's making the profit for this is Canadian. So this one, No, absolutely not. And if you're going to be a million women marching out there, where the fuck are the environmentalist groups? Where the fuck is Greenpeace? Where are you? See, this is one of the things that I keep bringing up to people in this country. We pick and choose our boiling points when we should have a clear line in the sand to our leadership. This is not acceptable. That's not acceptable. And have a clear line. We don't budge. We don't flex. Now you got a warning to send the feds into Chicago. Well, what does that mean? I mean, nobody is arguing that Chicago needs to be cleaned up. Rahm Emanuel is turning that city into a fucking war zone. The people who live there will tell you, Chicago is a war zone. Are there great parts still left of Chicago? Absolutely. But that's like saying there aren't bad parts of New York, or there aren't bad parts of Los Angeles. So, what he means by that, we're going to do federalize the police force. And I mean, if that happens, a lot of people should be worried, because one of the ways you create a dictatorship is you militarize the police. That's how Putin did it. Putin basically militarized the police in Russia. They're basically an arm of the military. Do we want that in America? We already have issues with the police in this country. Nobody's denying that. And for people who deny it, you're idiots. There is a problem. There is a very glaring problem with abuse of authority, abuse of power, judicial oversight. It's there. So, again, what does he mean by this? And the fact that him and his handlers, because let's be honest, he has handlers. He has communication handlers. He has policy handlers. They don't effectively communicate what they're doing. All this hubbub about him barring the EPA from Twitter, barring national parks from Twitter. It would be one thing if there was a security concern. But to bar agencies posting facts about science, maybe it's a show of force, maybe it's a show of power to say, hey, I'm in control now, but it's infantile. It's infantile, it looks stupid. If anything, I would be hammering the intelligence agencies for leaks, which he said he's going to do, but that would be my focus. Because all throughout the Obama administration, shit came out of the CIA and the FBI that nobody had any business knowing. Period. And that includes very specifically mainstream news media. And the fact that the news media is now so embedded with our intelligence agencies. I'm not one for Stalinistic government, but secrets are secrets for a reason. Good or bad, they're secrets for reasons. Yeah, you had Snowden expose the NSA spying and stuff. Bad or good, it was done. But sometimes secrets are secrets for reasons. Revealing them will jeopardize lives, jeopardize national security, and if that was his reasoning behind it, it might go down better. But right now, it just looks like an infantile tantrum. And whether it's his handlers that are responsible for this, or him, it's not very clear. It's really not. And this kind of goes towards what Obama was trying to convey to people, that because his people have very little experience on federal level government, we might be seeing a lot more of this. I hope not, because it's deflating from his message and his goals. Wanting to keep jobs in America, wanting to incentivize companies for staying here. It's a good idea. In the past, it has not worked. All they do is reap profits, and none of it comes down to the American people, including jobs. And, that's his argument for the pipeline. The pipeline's going to create 28,000 jobs, but they're all temporary jobs that expire within 2 years, and the permanent jobs are maybe 5 or 6, because 80% of the operations for the pipelines are controlled via remote in Canada. So not really a job grower. And the other thing is you see a lot of these American companies now magically creating jobs. You have to wonder, why were they holding out? If they needed these positions before, why weren't they creating them? Was it fear of a minimum wage increase? Was it fear of punitive actions from the Obama administration? I mean, I know part of it was Obamacare. People don't want to understand this. If you don't work in retail, if you don't work in service industries, Obamacare was a nightmare. Obamacare basically forced companies into taking their part-time labor, which represents a good 40 to 50% of their employment pool, and having to mandatorily cut their hours below 30 hours to keep from having to pay them benefits. It forced them onto the Obamacare exchanges. So what that meant is they had these gluts of labor that they couldn't fill. Removing Obamacare, removing the constraints, is kind of good for business because they can now hire or expand the amount of hours that existing part-time employees can accrue without being penalized by having to pay them benefits. Is that good or bad? The problem is in a lot of industries you need that. You need the fill-in with the part-time labor to amend scheduling holes, to cover vacations, to fill in during holidays. You needed that. The problem is we are now getting this non-committal description of what's going to replace Obamacare. If they're insisting on tossing this back to the free markets again, which it sounds like they're talking about doing, I'm not 100% sure. Again, they don't communicate their intentions very well. Maybe they're doing this on purpose because they don't want the scrutiny, because they don't want to have to, chronically explain themselves to the media, because, now they're picking at them left and right for everything. It would be nice if there's a clearer plan. Rand Paul's plan, which he proposed prior to Obamacare being foisted onto us, was a fairly decent plan. One of the things that I think should have been, it was part of a proposal for the Obamacare, but it wasn't big enough, was the expansion of Medicare and Medicaid for people with pre-existing conditions. That way you don't tie them to health plans that may fold, go bankrupt, disappear. They're tied directly to the government. So they have a stream of benefits that doesn't expire. If those people are not going to be guaranteed 100% coverage, if they're still going to be forced to find partial coverage or select coverage, or they're just going to be forced back onto insurance companies that only cover certain things and the government claims that their subsidies are then going to pay for the rest of it, I personally don't like that. I think that's a bad idea. Let's see, what other things? His defunding of abortions overseas. I'm not 100% sure myself as to what that's tied to, because as far as I know, like humanitarian groups and Doctors Without Borders and stuff that operate out of America don't get funding for that to begin with. I'm not sure. I also think, if I'm not 100% sure, it's illegal for us to actually participate in abortions in other countries where it's not legal. I mean, I'm not 100%. I didn't read up on this act that dates back to Reagan. The whole Planned Parenthood issue is, in my eyes, moot, because they don't get federal funding for abortions. They do get it for other things, but in a time where we should be encouraging more health care, better prenatal care, honestly encouraging people to have children in this country. I mean, I know it's a weird thing to say, but it's something that, if we're going to encourage people to have children, the ability to have children and the quality of life of those children should be getting better, not worse. And that's where, even though I have no intention of having children, I agree in subsidies for first-time parents. I agree in paternal leave, maternal leave. That stuff I agree with to a degree. Who pays for it? I don't think employers should, to be absolutely honest with you, because they're already paying for those people not being there, because then you have to find temporary fill-ins for their positions, depending on their experience level and their position and their importance in a company. They're already costing companies something in terms of profit, labor. If you don't know much about labor and you don't work in a business, you don't understand the impact of taking a full-time employee out for, say, 18 months paid, but by who? The company? If you're going to foist that on the small businesses, again, this is one of the things that when they started arguing about the minimum wage, I immediately said, whoa, wait a minute. That will destroy small businesses. And mandatory paternity and maternal leave will probably do the same thing. If there is not some huge offset by the federal government to compensate these companies for this. Because what you're doing is you're saying, I'm taking part of your labor force completely out of the picture for 12 to 18 months. They're getting their full salary, plus benefits. Oh, and by the way, find somebody to replace them. And you can't eliminate their position because they're coming back after those 18 months. So this is something that, to me, it's a simple thing that nobody in Washington seems to think about. And how he's going to form the scope of his maternal paternal leave thing, I have no idea. And again, that boils down to communication. And they don't communicate effectively. His people don't communicate effectively. Let's see. Oh, and then of course, completely segregated from Trump, we had this wonderful, wonderful revelation. And, you know, I made no secret that I was never an Obama fan. Ever. It wasn't racial. It was the way he carried himself. It was the way he created policy where it was basically my way or the highway or get the fuck out of the way. And if he didn't get what he wanted, he went through executive orders. Legal or not, how many he did them, he started to become a self-imposed dictator where, oh, you don't agree with me? Too fucking bad. Whether it was something the American people thought was for them or not, too bad, you're getting it anyway. Right before he left office, our friend who claims that he is not Muslim, has no ties to Muslim organizations, doesn't feel pity for terrorists, takes $221 million of my tax money and your tax money and ships it over to the Palestinian Authority. Now, again, I don't understand why people need to be re-educated about this. Palestinian Authority is directly tied to Hamas, which is a notarized terrorist organization. Abu Abbas, as much as he claims he's for a Palestinian state and peace with Israel, is the biggest two-faced son of a bitch you'll ever meet. The guy lies out his fucking ass while propping up Hamas. And now they just got 221 American dollars, which overseas is probably worth a hell of a lot more, to do what with? How are we going to track what they spend it on? Because I guarantee you it's not going to be spent on blankets for children. It's going to be spent on mortar shells to lob at Israel. And again, I'm no fan of Israel lately, but what the fuck? If anything, that should be prosecutable. As much as Trump wants to go after Hillary and stuff, basically Obama just went and funded international terrorism, as if the deal with Iran wasn't bad enough. Now we're blatantly sending money to a terrorist organization and going, oh, it's humanitarian. At least I think that's what he claims. I don't even know if he has given any explanation whatsoever as to why this happened. And now I hear that the State Department is investigating this. So, as if all his commutations of drug dealer sentences, murderer sentences, terrorist sentences, a fucking treasonous trannies sentence reduced. Now he's funding terrorism. And this is what this is why over the course of 8 years the Democrats lost over 1,000 seats, 1,000 legislative seats. This is why they lost an election. This is why they probably won't win after the first 4 years of Trump's term. Even if Trump doesn't run, they're not going to win. Unless something catastrophically wrong goes on in the course of 4 years. Which I seriously doubt, honest to God. Unless something seriously horrendous happens, the Democrats are fucked. And this just puts fuel on the fire to make them look worse. They look anti-American. They look anti-everything. They're anti-religion. They're anti-freedom. They're anti-freedom of speech. They're anti-Israel. They're just anti-anything that the rest of the world supports. And it ties in directly to Obama's horrendous fucking foreign policy. They keep talking about Russian interference. It's awfully odd. Most of this Russian interference happened during Obama's term, and he did very little, if anything, to circumvent it. Ooh, I threw some freaking diplomats out of the country for supposedly spying, if I remember right. So if you knew they were spying, why were they here for so long? And again, this just feeds into the idea that Obama was set out to destroy this country from the get-go. This is a man whose wife refused to put her hand on her heart for the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem. Regardless, this is the type of person she is. It's the type of person he is. He can claim to be patriotic and pro-American all he wants. When you boil it down to it, he sowed enough derision in this country to cause problems. He ruined our foreign policy, made us look weak to the rest of the world, went out of his way to start destabilizing our military. And I'm not talking about putting women in combat roles or homosexuals. I'm talking about the decline of our military, the scaling back of our military, the burning out of our military by reinvesting a small pool of troops into chronic warfare, not listening to our leadership about Iraq, not listening to the world about what he was doing would turn ISIS into a regional power. He did not listen. Again, this is his mentality of, I go it my way regardless of what anybody else says. Trump's probably going to be the same way. We're already seeing this. But his core focus is America. Good or bad, given that we are now in a global domain and we have our tentacles, especially our government, in so many things globally, that divesting in some of them is going to be completely impossible. And I think, unfortunately, Trump is going to learn the hard way that our excessively growing federal government has invested itself in things that it never should have to begin with. And it's going to hurt like hell trying to pull out of them. And one of them is going to be our relationship with a lot of people in foreign countries. I mean, as it stands right now, the EU is responsible for the destruction of Europe, or the near destruction. I mean, if you follow current trends, France and Spain will be Muslim European states in the next 20 years. This is the legacy that Angela Merkel has to live with. This is what she did to Europe. And it's what Obama and Hillary wanted to do here. It's what liberals want to do here. They can deny it all they want, but it's what they want. When you say you want to take 40,000 people, or plus or minus whatever total they were thinking of, that the FBI and the CIA said 99% possibility they will be infiltrated by ISIS or some terrorist organization. It's not just ISIS. You have so many different offshoots of Al Qaeda that there's no way to vet them. They're coming from countries where their records have been destroyed. They have no records. There's no one to corroborate who they are, where they came from, their ties to organizations, religious zealots. You don't know. That's what Obama and Hillary wanted to do this country. So now we're dealing with a destabilized Europe, partially encouraged by Obama. Obama shook hands with Merkel when she, said, hey, I'm going to go flood Europe with hundreds of thousands of immigrants. Oh yeah, go ahead, do it. Go ahead, try it. Let's see what happens. Then you have his reset with Russia, which was the biggest failure ever. And this whole thing of us dictating policy to foreign governments is a joke. I'm going to say this right now. I don't like Iran. Iran is a sponsor of terror. But we have no right to tell any country on this planet that you can't develop nuclear energy, you can't develop nuclear weapons. We're being hypocrites. We have a huge arsenal. We've given the technology away to countries like India, basically creating a by-proxy war between Pakistan and India. Do you guys see the pictures that we're creating around the world? We have no business doing this. If people want things, get it yourself. And yeah, there will be powers out there that will offer it to them. Russia, because basically we tried to destroy them economically, yeah, they started shopping shit around like nuclear technology to people. They're almost 100% responsible for North Korea's current nuclear capabilities, but so is China. Don't kid yourself. Which is why Trump has such a icy reception towards China. He's not stupid. And a lot of people have been saying this for a long time. You can point the fingers at North Korea all you want, but they do not act alone. Pyongyang did not have the resources on their own to develop nuclear capabilities. But lo and behold, the Soviet Union and China do. And this is the problem because Obama was so malfeasant with America's foreign policy. We made ties with the wrong people. And this is something where I completely disagree with Trump and the way he's handling our southern border. Yes, we need border security. Yes, do we need a wall? No. My personal idea, we have hundreds of thousands of military personnel that are not in active duty, that I'm sure would love to be stationed at home patrolling our borders. And people saying, oh, you shouldn't militarize our border. No, you don't understand. 80% of the gangs and the drugs that come into this country come through our southern border. MS-13, drug traffickers, you name it. They all come from our southern borders. Illegal immigration is a real issue in this country. It may have affected an election. We don't know. As much as Pew researchers and electoral researchers, they don't 100% know. They take poll groups and, they single out states, but you don't know. There's something like, 5 million undocumented illegals in this country as it stands? That number is expected to triple in the next 20 years. This will shape America, probably for the worse. I'm not saying all these people are bad, but ask anybody who lives in the southern border of Arizona, anybody that lives in the southern border of California. Ask law enforcement what it's like. So yeah, we do need border security, but one of the things that would turn that spigot into a trickle is a much better economic relation with Mexico. Not necessarily shipping our jobs down there, but working in tandem with Mexico to make their economy stronger, to weed out their corruption, to encourage people to stay in Mexico, live there, work there, and make their country better. And this is where, just the other day, one of the things that started setting off red flags for me was there was an interview with the new president of Mexico, and he basically said that they will be now looking for economic opportunities with Latin America, okay, Africa, and the Middle East. Africa has a Muslim problem, and the Middle East, do we really want Iranian companies right at the south of our border? Saudi companies? Pakistani companies? If anything, that would be a greater threat to our national security than refugees. And this is where you can be pro-American to a flaw. And this is my issue with Trump right now. There's two directions. There's two countries that we need to keep our ties the strongest with. Mexico, Canada. Canada will probably always be our ally. It's going to take a lot to piss Canada off. But Mexico, given the way we've dealt with the war on drugs, dealt with immigration, something needs to change. Yeah, they're pissed that we're going to build a wall or, enforce our borders. I'm sure if it's the other way around, I mean, they've jailed people from America for just crossing the border. Us, we give them food, blankets, housing, health care, education. Disproportionate and unnecessary? You decide. But I don't know. So now we're going to have his cabinet approved, pretty much carte blanche, which could be alarming, could be great. Does the educational system in this country need to shake up? Yeah. Is Betsy DeVos going to do it? Is Ben Carson qualified to run HUD? No. Honestly, what is his qualifications? He's a brain surgeon. What does a brain surgeon know about housing and urban development? Nothing. He probably hasn't lived in a HUD building since he was, what, 5? So what does he know? Could be wrong. I mean, it's a position that putting an African American in is probably the best thing. But I don't know. And now he's going to be coming up with a Supreme Court nomination, which could be interesting. The idea of him nominating Ted Cruz could be horrifying. I mean, everybody lauds Ted Cruz as being a constitutional Republican, but he's also an egotist and a bit of a douchebag. And he's very anti-woman, beyond the pale, and he's very anti-homosexual as well. So, yeah, that's where we stand today. So, we're now less than a week into the Trump administration, and I'm like this right now. And for anybody that, is going to come and call me a hypocrite, I never once said I wanted Trump to be my president. I never said he'd be the perfect president. And I did not vote for him. So for anybody that wants to start shooting comments back out at me, calling me a hypocrite and shit, get informed. Later.